The Galactic Council chamber was filled with the quiet hum of distant conversations, diplomats murmuring to one another as they waited for the session to begin. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated seats, their expressions ranging from boredom to mild curiosity. At the center of the vast, circular hall, a auxiliary scientist stood nervously, his greenish-blue skin shifting in hue, an involuntary reaction to stress. He adjusted his long ceremonial robes before clearing his throat. His voice, though steady, carried an edge of urgency. "Members of the Council, I stand before you with a dire warning," he said, his large black eyes scanning the room. "Humanity is not what you believe them to be." A low ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. The name of the species was barely spoken in these halls, and when it was often accompanied by laughter or mild disdain. The humans were newcomers to the stars, having only just begun to expand beyond their home system. To most of the Council, they were insignificant, a young race struggling to find its place in a galaxy ruled by civilizations thousands of years older than them. An older, heavily armored Dravak warlord leaned forward, his golden eyes glinting with amusement. "Tell me, Silari," he said, his deep voice carrying easily through the hall. "What great threat could these primitives possibly pose?" The scientist hesitated before responding. "It is not their strength that should concern you. It is their nature." Another round of murmurs filled the chamber. The auxiliary took a deep breath and continued. "In just a few centuries, humanity has advanced at a rate no species has ever matched. Their technology, their warfare, their adaptability. It defies all known patterns of development. They do not simply learn, they evolve in real time. When faced with threats, they do not retreat or accept their limitations. They find solutions, no matter the cost." The Dravak warlord chuckled, exchanging amused glances with the other military leaders in attendance. "You speak as if they are some kind of unstoppable force," he said. "They have no empire, no fleet to challenge us, no claim to power." The scientist's skin darkened further, a sign of frustration. "Not yet," he admitted. "But that is precisely the danger. You assume they will remain weak. You assume they will never catch up. But I have seen their progress firsthand. I have read the reports from those who have studied them. When they are faced with an enemy stronger than them, they do not surrender, they adapt. They find ways to turn weaknesses into strengths. They have done it on their own world countless times." A member of the trade guild scoffed. "They are still bound by their primitive instincts. They fight among themselves even now. What unity could they possibly have to challenge the great powers of the galaxy?" The scientist nodded grimly. "Yes, they fight amongst themselves. They have waged wars so terrible that entire regions of their planet have been scared for centuries. But that is what makes them dangerous. They have already experienced destruction on a level most of us cannot even comprehend. They have faced extinction and survived. When the time comes that they turn their focus outward, when they finally see the galaxy as the next battlefield." He hesitated, choosing his next words carefully. "I do not know if any of us will be able to stop them." The silence that followed was broken by soft laughter. The council members shook their heads, amused by the auxiliary's paranoia. The Dravak warlord leaned back, his posture relaxed. "Let them come," he said. "We will remind them of their place." The scientist clenched his fists, knowing his warning would go unheeded. He had seen the signs. He had witnessed the first hints of human ingenuity in battle simulations, their relentless drive to improve, to grow stronger. But the arrogance of the council was unshakable. They believed they were untouchable, that their ancient empires would last forever. He took one last look at the assembled leaders before stepping away from the podium. If they would not listen, then they would have to learn the hard way. Far from the council's chambers, beyond the carefully drawn borders of their empires, the Dravak Dominion had already begun its plans to expand. Their fleets were moving, their generals eager to claim new systems. The humans, small and unnoticed in the grand scheme of galactic politics, had been chosen as an easy conquest. The First Fleet entered the Sol system with little concern. The orders were simple: subjugate or eliminate. The Dravak had done this countless times before. The process was always the same. Their warships would arrive, issue demands, and if resistance was encountered, they would wipe out any opposition without hesitation. Entire civilizations had fallen before them, and humanity would be no different. But then something unexpected happened. The fleet sent their initial transmissions, announcing their presence. No response. They moved closer, expecting Earth's defenses to be crude and outdated. But as they approached Mars, their sensors began picking up strange anomalies. Distortions in space, interference in their communications. Then, without warning, the first ship in the formation vanished. Panic spread through the fleet as scanners searched for an explanation. The admiral in command ordered a retreat, but before they could move, another ship disappeared. Then another. The Dravak officers shouted over each other, demanding answers. What kind of weapons were the humans using? How were they capable of such precise attacks? Then, a message arrived on their main screen. A simple, chilling sentence. You were warned. Static filled the air, and the fleet's remaining ships suddenly lost power. One by one, their systems failed, their engines went silent, and they were left floating in the dark, helpless. From the depths of space, unseen by their sensors, humanity's first true warships watched in silence, their crews calm and methodical. They had studied their enemies, just as their enemies had studied them. And now, for the first time in history, the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to underestimate humanity. The wreckage of the Dravak fleet drifted silently through the void, broken hulls, and shattered remnants of warships scattered across the darkness of space. No distress signals had been sent. No warnings had escaped. The mighty Dravak fleet, once considered an unstoppable force, had been reduced to nothing without a single shot fired in response. On Earth, deep beneath the surface of an unassuming military base, Admiral Elias Carter stood before a massive screen displaying the aftermath. His sharp eyes studied the footage from the stealth drones that still loitered near the wreckage, ensuring that nothing had survived. His expression was unreadable, but those who knew him well could sense the tension in his stance. They didn't listen, he muttered, more to himself than to the officers standing beside him. They never do. One of the intelligence officers, a woman named Lieutenant Avery Chen, hesitated before speaking. Sir, should we make a public declaration? Let the galaxy know what happened here. Carter exhaled sharply, shaking his head. No, we stay quiet. Let them wonder. Let them question what happened to their fleet. He turned to face his officers, his voice firm. If we reveal our hand too soon, the next wave will come prepared. Right now, fear is our greatest weapon. A low murmur of agreement spread through the command center. They had known this day would come. Humanity's rapid rise had drawn the attention of the older species, and sooner or later, someone was bound to test their strength. The Dravak had been the first. They would not be the last. Sir, another officer spoke up. Intelligence reports indicate that the Dravak homeworld has not yet noticed the fleet's disappearance. Their empire is vast. One lost fleet won't raise suspicions for some time. Carter nodded slowly. Then we use that time wisely. He turned back to the screen, watching as automated drones began the process of dismantling the wreckage, salvaging what they could while erasing all traces of human involvement. If the Dravak ever found what remained, it would look like an accident, a catastrophic failure of their own systems. And by the time they realized otherwise, it would be far too late. Far from Earth, in the heart of Dravak-controlled space, High Warlord Kargith was in the middle of a grand feast when the first whispers of unease reached him. The aging warrior sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by his generals and warlords, his golden armor gleaming under the light of massive chandeliers. The room was filled with the sounds of feasting, the deep laughter of conquerors who had never known defeat. A messenger approached, bowing deeply before speaking. Great Warlord, our fleet has failed to report back from their conquest of the human homeworld. Kargith barely glanced at him, taking a sip from his ornate goblet. Communications disruptions are common in the outer territories. They will report soon. The messenger hesitated. With respect, Warlord, it has been days. Not a single transmission has been received. No distress calls. No status reports. It is as if they have vanished. That made Kargith pause. His golden eyes narrowed as he set down his goblet. Silence like this was not common. Even if the fleet had encountered resistance, they would have sent reports. If they had been destroyed, distress beacons would have activated automatically. The lack of any sign at all was troubling. The warlords around the table exchanged glances, their amusement fading. One of them, a scared veteran named Forkel, leaned forward. Perhaps the humans had stronger defenses than we anticipated. Kargith scoffed. Impossible. Our scouts reported no significant fleet presence. Their technology is primitive. They have no means to resist our forces. But even as he spoke the words, a seed of doubt had taken root. The humans were an anomaly. Unlike other species that had gradually risen to power over thousands of years, humanity had surged forward at an unnatural pace. Their ability to adapt, to evolve under pressure, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. He rose from his seat, his voice heavy with authority. Prepare a second fleet, double the size of the first. If the humans resisted, we will crush them. If something happened to our forces, we will uncover the truth. The warlords nodded, their confidence returning. But as Kargith stared into the burning flames of the Great Hall, a nagging thought refused to leave him. The warnings about humanity had always seemed exaggerated, tales of an unpredictable, relentless species that refused to bow. What if they hadn't been exaggerated at all? Back on Earth, Admiral Carter received the latest intelligence reports with a grim smile. The Dravak were sending another fleet, twice the size, twice the firepower. They still believed their numbers would be enough. He turned to his officers. Begin Phase 2. Let's show them what happens when you ignore a warning. The second Dravak fleet emerged from hyperspace, their massive warships blotting out the stars as they arrived near the last known location of their missing brethren. Their ships, painted in the blood-red insignia of their warlord, carried twice the firepower of the first invasion force. It was an armada meant to crush resistance, to erase any trace of defiance. Grand Commander Voktal stood on the bridge of the Dominator, the lead battleship of the fleet. His 4 yellow eyes scanned the displays, expecting to see the wreckage of human ships, or perhaps the scattered remains of their own fleet. Instead, there was nothing. No debris, no distress signals, no battle remnants drifting through the void. It was as if the first fleet had never existed. Scanners, report. Voktal barked. The crew worked feverishly, their clawed fingers dancing over controls. After a tense silence, an officer spoke. No signs of battle, Commander. No wreckage, no life signs, nothing. Voktal's eyes narrowed. He had expected casualties, resistance, perhaps even a costly victory, but not this. A cold sensation, unfamiliar and unwelcome, settled in his chest. This is impossible, one of his lieutenants muttered. Even if they were defeated, there would be something left. Ships don't just disappear. Voktal agreed. He had fought many wars, conquered many species. The humans were supposed to be an inferior race, their defenses laughable. And yet here he was, staring at empty space where a fleet should have been. Then, without warning, the alarm screamed across the bridge. Emergency signal detected. Voktal turned sharply. From where? The officer's face twisted in confusion. From inside our fleet, Commander. A distress beacon, one of ours. Voktal's blood ran cold. Who activated it? The answer came in the form of a ship, one of their own, a Dravak destroyer, drifting from the outer formation. Its hull was damaged, its lights flickering. All ships, hold position. Voktal commanded. Open a channel to that vessel. Static filled the bridge before a garbled voice broke through. Dead. They're all dead. It's inside. We never saw, never heard. Then silence. Voktal's breath was steady, but inside, his instincts screamed warnings he had never felt before. He turned to his officers. Send a boarding team. I want to know what happened to that ship. Moments later, an elite unit of Dravak soldiers boarded the abandoned destroyer, their weapons raised as they moved through its darkened halls. Bridge is empty, one soldier reported through comms. No bodies. No bodies. Voktal repeated, his claws digging into the armrests of his chair. Not even the dead. Negative, Commander. It's like they vanished. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Then, static. A scream. Gunfire. A wet, gurgling sound. And then, silence. Voktal's fists clenched as he stood. Pull them out. Now. But there was no response. The boarding team was gone. On the bridge of the Dominator, every officer felt it. The dread. The unseen horror creeping at the edge of their understanding. The humans had left no wreckage. No signs of a fight. Because there had been no fight. The Dravak fleet had not been destroyed. It had been taken. And whatever had done it was already here. Voktal turned to his crew, his voice colder than the void itself. All ships, battle formations, prepare for. The lights flickered. And one by one, the Dravak fleet began to disappear. Darkness swallowed the Dominator's bridge for a fleeting moment, the cold silence stretching far longer than it should have. Then the emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie red glows over the panicked faces of the Dravak officers. Report. Voktal barked, his voice sharp with urgency. All systems are fluctuating, an officer stammered. Something is interfering with our controls. Weapons, shields, engines, unresponsive. A deep, sickening realization crept into Voktal's mind. This wasn't an attack in the conventional sense. No enemy ships had fired on them. No fleet had appeared to challenge them in open battle. Yet, one by one, his ships were vanishing. He forced himself to remain calm. Status on the boarding team. The communications officer swallowed hard. Still no response, Commander. Their life signs disappeared from our trackers the moment the ship went dark. Voktal ground his teeth. Pull back. We need to regroup. Send a priority transmission tow. The ship trembled. It wasn't a normal impact. It wasn't an explosion or a collision. It felt wrong, as though something enormous had brushed against them in the darkness, something that shouldn't be there. Then the screaming began. Not from the speakers, not from the comms. It was coming from inside the ship. Voktal's blood ran cold as the internal security feeds lit up with chaos. In the lower decks, something moved through the halls, unseen but devastating. Soldiers fired their weapons, but their targets weren't visible. Their bodies twisted and collapsed, vanishing into the shadows as though the darkness itself had devoured them. A cold whisper brushed through the air. Not a sound, but a sensation, a presence. The Dominator was being hunted. Voktal had seen many things in his lifetime. He had led countless conquests, raised worlds, crushed entire civilizations beneath his heel. But never, not once, had he felt fear. Until now. A message flashed on the main screen, overriding all other data. It wasn't in Dravak script. It wasn't even in their language. It was in human English. You were warned. The message blinked once, twice. Then, in an instant, the Dominator's sensors came back online, just in time to show them the truth. The First Fleet hadn't disappeared into nothingness. It had been assimilated. The wreckage they never found. The soldiers who never sent distress signals. They were all there, hidden just beyond the visible spectrum. A massive formation of distorted, repurposed vessels, twisted into something else, now emerging from the darkness. And they were no longer Dravak ships. They belonged to something else, something that now turned its attention to Voktal's fleet. The lights flickered again, More ships vanished. A chill settled deep in Vogtel's bones as he finally understood. The humans had never built massive war fleets. They had never fielded grand armadas. They had built something worse. Something that took fleets, that swallowed enemies whole and left nothing behind. His fleet had ignored the warnings. And now, the consequences had come. The Dominator shuddered as the void itself seemed to pulse around it. Vogtel gripped the armrests of his command chair, his claws digging into the reinforced metal. The lights flickered again, dimming for only a moment. But in that moment, another ship was gone. Not destroyed. Not disabled. Simply gone. His fleet, once numbering in the hundreds, had been reduced to scattered clusters of confused, terrified vessels, their captains screaming over the comms for orders, for explanations, for salvation. Vogtel had none to give. "Shut off all outgoing transmissions," he commanded, his voice ice-cold. "They are tracking us somehow. Any signal may be a beacon." His officers hesitated, their reptilian faces twisted with fear. "But, Commander, that is an order." They obeyed, silencing the fleet-wide cries of panic. The bridge became eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of flickering power systems. Vogtel turned to his chief science officer. "What are we dealing with?" The officer, normally composed, now trembled as he ran calculations. "Unknown energy signatures are present all around us." "But, Commander, it's not just an energy field." He swallowed. "It's something alive." Vogtel's throat tightened. "Explain." The officer hesitated before bringing up the distorted images of the missing fleet, no longer pristine warships, but grotesque amalgamations of metal and something organic, as if their vessels had been consumed and restructured into something alien. The hulls pulsed, shifting as if they breathed. Vogtel's mind raced. This was no mere human countermeasure. It was something beyond warships and weapons. "Commander," a new voice came, a young officer, barely past his training cycles. I'm picking up something strange in the audio spectrum." "Play it." The bridge speakers crackled, and at first, there was only static. Then, beneath the interference, they heard it. A voice. No, many voices, layered atop one another, speaking in a garbled mix of languages. And among them, a clear, chilling phrase in perfect Dravic. "You are not prepared." The ship lurched violently, throwing several officers to the ground. Sparks exploded from the control panels as alarms blared. Then, silence. The main view screen flickered to life, but instead of external sensor data, a face appeared. Human. A man, his expression calm, his eyes dark and unfathomable. "You should have listened," the human said. His voice was quiet, almost sympathetic. "You were warned." Vogtel bared his fangs. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head. "The better question is, what are we?" Before Vogtel could respond, the human continued. "You wanted to conquer, to dominate. You saw our warnings as threats, but we weren't warning you for our sake." His gaze darkened. "We were warning you for yours." The bridge crew stared, frozen in place. The human leaned forward slightly. "You see, your first fleet wasn't defeated. It was converted. And now," a cold smile touched his lips, "now you stand at the threshold of something far worse than war." The screen flickered, distorting the image. But for the briefest of moments, behind the man, something loomed. Something vast, shifting, watching. Then, the transmission cut. A deep, resonating sound filled the bridge, not a mechanical alarm, not a distress signal. A heartbeat. Slow, rhythmic, powerful. And it was coming from inside the ship. The bridge lights dimmed once more. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. Vogtel reached for his weapon. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to fear. Vogtel had seen death. He had delivered it, commanded it, and wielded it like a blade against countless species. But never, never had he felt it creeping toward him like this. The heartbeat still pulsed through the ship, deep, and unnatural. It was inside the Dominator now, pressing against the walls, seeping through the metal. The lights flickered, and the air grew thick, as if something unseen was breathing just beyond the visible spectrum. He had to act. "Seal the bridge," Voktal ordered, his voice like iron, masking the ice-cold fear clawing at his spine. "Activate emergency bulkheads. No one gets in or out." His officers scrambled, but the moment one reached for the controls, the lights cut out entirely. The only illumination came from the emergency glow strips along the floor, casting long, wavering shadows. Then, the whispering started. Not words, not voices, memories. Voktal felt them more than he heard them. Visions of his past campaigns. He saw the worlds he had burned, the civilians who had screamed as they were dragged away, the dying gasps of those who had begged for mercy. Only now, he wasn't watching from afar. Now he was the one suffering. The pain, the terror, the helplessness. The shadows moved. A low, wet sound echoed from the far end of the bridge, like something shifting, something changing. One of his officers let out a strangled gasp. "See, Commander, it's here." Voktal turned, weapon raised. And there, standing where no one had stood before, was a man. No, a human. He was tall, clad in a dark uniform with no insignia, no markings. His eyes, empty, yet burning with something unnatural, locked onto Voktal with a cold amusement. "You still don't understand," the human murmured. "You think this is a battle, a war." He tilted his head slightly. "It's not." Voktal's claws tightened around his weapon. "Then what is it?" The human stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. "This," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "is a reckoning." The heartbeat thundered, a massive pulse rippling through the ship. The shadows twisted, stretching toward the crew. One of the officers screamed as something unseen took him, yanked him into the darkness, his body vanishing before he could even fire a shot. Panic erupted. Weapons discharged wildly, bolts of energy slicing through the bridge, hitting nothing. The human never moved. He just watched. More officers disappeared. Some screamed. Some didn't even have the chance. And then, it was just Voktal. Alone. The human stood before him, unmoving, his expression unreadable. Voktal was breathing heavily, his claws trembling. "You? What are you?" The human exhaled, as if considering the question. Then he smiled. "Something you should have feared long before now." Voktal lunged, weapon raised. Darkness. A single whisper brushed against his mind before everything vanished. "You were warned." Voktal awoke to silence. Not the silence of deep space, nor the silence of a disciplined warship, but something far worse. A silence that listened. He was still on the Dominator, or at least, what remained of it. The bridge was unrecognizable. The walls pulsed faintly, their metallic surfaces laced with something organic, something alive. The control panels flickered, their displays twisted into unreadable symbols. And he was alone. His officers, gone. No bodies, no blood, no sign that they had ever existed. Only shadows remained. Voktal's breathing was ragged as he staggered to his feet, gripping his sidearm with shaking claws. He had fought battles against species that spanned entire star systems. He had led extermination campaigns, crushed rebellions, enslaved entire worlds. But this was different. A whisper slid through the air, curling around his mind like smoke. "You were warned." Voktal spun, weapon raised, but there was nothing. Just shifting shadows, stretching unnaturally as if something was moving just beyond his vision. He took a step forward, forcing his instincts into submission. He needed to reach the emergency controls. He had to send a distress signal, call for reinforcements, anything. The second he touched the console, the screen shifted. A face appeared. The same human from before. Still calm, still watching. "You are persistent," the human said, his voice steady. I suppose that's what made your kind so dangerous. Voktal bared his fangs. Where is my crew? The human tilted his head slightly. They've changed. The word sent a chill down Voktal's spine. You did this, he snarled. You and your cursed species. What are you? What is this? The human exhaled, almost like a sigh. You always believed humanity was weak, fragile. You saw our warnings as threats, our restraint as cowardice. His gaze darkened. But you failed to understand the truth. The screen flickered. Images flashed. Twisted wreckage of Dravak warships floating lifelessly, their hulls grown over with something unnatural. Entire fleets converted, their shapes grotesque, reshaped into something beyond technology, beyond organic. Something in between. We are not conquerors, the human continued. We never wanted war. His voice lowered. But we evolve when war is forced upon us. The heartbeat returned, slow and methodical, vibrating through the walls. Voktal clenched his jaw. Whatever this is, whatever you've become, it will not stop my people. The Dravak Empire will come for you. They will burn your worlds to ash. The human simply smiled. No, he said softly. They won't. And then the screen turned, showing something Voktal wished he had never seen. The Dravak homeworld. The skies, once filled with their mighty fleets, now darkened by an unnatural shadow. Their defense stations, silent. Their capital cities, crumbling, not from bombardment, from within. The same creeping corruption that had taken his fleet was already there, already spreading, already consuming. Voktal staggered back, his claws numb, his breath shallow. No, this isn't possible. The human's voice was quiet, final. You ignored the warnings. The screen flickered one last time, revealing the capital city of the Dravak. The towering structures, the mighty monuments of his people, covered in shifting darkness, pulsing as if alive. And among the ruins, figures walked. Not Dravak, not human. Something new, something that had been born from war. From them. The transmission cut. The heartbeat stopped. And Voktal, the great warlord, the conqueror of species, finally understood what it meant to lose. Voktal stood frozen, his body refusing to obey his mind's desperate commands. His homeworld, the heart of the Dravak Empire, was falling. No, had fallen. The image of his world, his people, twisted into something unrecognizable, burned into his mind. Their towering cities, once symbols of strength, were now crumbling under an infestation beyond his comprehension. Their warships, once feared across the stars, drifted lifelessly, hollowed out from the inside. The Dravak were no longer an empire. They were prey. A static crackled from the flickering console, drawing Voktal's eyes back to the human. He was still there, watching, calm as ever. But now there was something else in his gaze. Not just cold amusement. Finality. You should have listened, the human said softly. Voktal's claws tightened into a fist. You think this is over? His voice trembled, but not with fear. Rage. The Dravak will rebuild. We will hunt your kind across the stars. We will find your homeworld and burn it to nothing. We will. The human laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Not mocking. Just disappointed. You still don't get it, he murmured. There is no war anymore. There is no empire. There is no revenge. He leaned forward slightly. There is only what comes next. A deep, resonant pulse shook the Dominator once more. But this time, it wasn't just within the ship. It came from beyond. From the stars themselves. Voktal staggered, gripping the console as the hull around him warped, shifting, bending like something was pressing against reality itself. The Dravak had mastered war. They had seen devastation, annihilation. But this was something else. What? His voice caught in his throat. What are you? The human exhaled, almost as if he pitied him. "We were human," he said. "Once." The shadows on the bridge moved, not like mere darkness, but like something alive, something waiting, something hungry. "We warned you. We told you to stop, to leave us be." The human's voice softened, almost regretful. "You chose not to listen." The bridge shuddered. The walls pulsed like muscle and sinew. The air itself thickened, pressing in, smothering, suffocating. The last thing Voktal saw was the human tilting his head ever so slightly. And then, silence. The Dravak never returned to the stars. Their fleets, their colonies, their entire empire, gone. Not destroyed, not conquered, erased. Where their worlds once stood, nothing remained but silent, empty voids, places where the fabric of space itself seemed to shy away. The galaxy whispered of what had happened, of how the Dravak had waged war on a species that had warned them again and again, a species that did not fight for conquest, did not fight for power, a species that had been forced to evolve into something else, and when they finally unleashed what they had become, there was no war, there was only a reckoning.